our very own ENT surgeon and Med Talk Health Talk host, Dr. Freddie Gomez, joins me now. So, Freddie, food poisoning can be caused by a lot of factors. Among them is the heat and humidity at the evacuation centers. Food spoilage can result from this. But, you know, unfortunately, given the situation there, not everyone can cook their own food, like in times like this when they're living in makeshift shelters. And it's pretty difficult given the circumstances. So what are the symptoms of food poisoning and what first aid treatment should be administered?
Well, first of all, that's exactly right, Ria. In situations like these where supply is short, so it's pretty much they're trying to deal with what they have. And food poisoning in this case was most likely because of food that was either properly handled and therefore contaminated or food that was improperly cooked. So some signs and symptoms of these would definitely be vomiting and diarrhea. So the type of vomiting and diarrhea can range from mild to really what they call projectile vomiting and diarrhea as well. So for mild cases, this could just resolve on its own. But for more severe cases, it can last even longer. The frequency might be higher, hence needing hospital treatment, hospital admission.
All right, so that would be the first aid treatment, really, in serious cases of vomiting and diarrhea. You would need to be admitted. You would need...
Not necessarily. For the mild cases, if the vomiting is there for control, you know, if they're able to expel pretty much what caused the food poisoning to begin with, replacing the fluids is number one, is the most important first aid that they can do. Replace the fluids, but don't do it fast. A lot of people might think that they vomited a lot, they had diarrhea, they have to replace it as quickly as possible. Do it slowly.
It's because like small sips,
small sips of water, yes. And once everything has passed, for those who have gone through it, to make their digestive system rest. So it's even the type of food that they eat. It has to be bland, low salt, low grease. So things like bananas, things like rice, and things like bread are the only things they should be eating.
Okay, so that's for the sort of quote-unquote simple cases. For the most complicated, you said they would need to be admitted, they would need to be rehydrated through an IV, that sort of thing?
That's exactly right. They need to be hydrated. Their fluids need to be brought into themselves through an IV line, because if you try and give them fluids, they will just vomit it out.
Right. Okay, and that itself solves the problem, because as we know, medical supplies and medicines are very in short supply in that area. Okay, so other things that are of concern for the people living in evacuation centers. Over the past few days, our correspondents have been talking to the people there, and many of the displaced families have really been complaining about the heat and the living conditions in general. What are the common health concerns in these situations where people are literally exposed to extreme heat? Right.
So in these cases, the first thing that people would experience from these would, like what we mentioned earlier, probably dehydration. The problem here I see is just the cramped living quarters. It's just people are too close to each other as much as possible. Well, you can't really try and get the most ideal situation where they have enough space. Each family has enough space for themselves. But the high heat, high humidity will definitely bring in dehydration. It may even bring out some heat stroke. So proper rehydration in these situations is definitely key.
Right. Another major concern is sanitation. You know, I was watching a report by our Trisha Terada yesterday, and, you know, some families didn't want to go to the evacuation centers. They just wanted to camp out in front of their house, first of all, so that they could watch their belongings, but also because they felt like it was a bit cleaner, because a lady said, you know, in the evacuation centers, they go to the bathroom in a plastic bag.
Right.
Right. So, again, when facilities are limited, how can we maintain, you know, high standards of sanitation?
Sanitation is probably, if not the most important concern in things like these, because once the sanitary situation of an area gets compromised, such as in situations like this, several other diseases will follow in. Waterborne diseases will follow in. Even contamination from food is easier when the sanitation is lost. But in these situations, as much as possible, the government should provide at least portable toilets for people to do their their bodily functions in. So for them to be able to urinate and defecate in controlled situations, in situations like these where there's not much organization, they pretty much need to go wherever they can go. So especially if the water source is downstream and the person doing their thing is upstream, you could find contamination in these situations very, very easily.
Yeah. Well, Philippine Red Cross Chairman Senator Richard Gordon has said the limited water supply is also one of the main problems in that area. Let's talk about the importance of drinking clean water, and as you said, maintaining hydration.
Right. So in this case, I saw videos of the government trying to provide as much clean drinking water as possible. So this is not important just for their drinking, but this is used for their cooking as well. So this is where contaminations, you want to try and stay off any form of contaminants to the food that they eat, because once someone gets sick from it, it is easily spread, especially in situations like these where the living quarters are so cramped and so tight. So having clean water is also a very, very important feat that the government needs to keep on tabs.
Well, speaking of contamination, also there's a concern of the makeshift hospitals, right? They've been set up, but again, sanitation, cleanliness, clean water is so key there.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns with the hospitals is the immediate care for those who are injured or those who are sick, who need hospital treatment. In this case, where they have makeshift tents out there, sanitation shouldn't be that much of a concern, because the doctors there are pretty much trained in situations which aren't so ideal. So the only concern that I could see from this scenario is the safety of those trying to provide the care. So as long as those tents are far from any large buildings that might collapse from aftershocks, or if hopefully these makeshift tents and these makeshift hospitals are at least a few kilometers away from the epicenter of the earthquake, then I think everything would be able to go well.
Right, so they can keep it somewhat sanitized.
Somewhat safe and sanitized as well, yes.
All right, well, the road to recovery is obviously quite a challenge, and you can help our fellow Filipinos in Mindanao. For those of you who want to donate, you can contact the NDRRMC, and we are flashing their hotline on the screen. That's 0917-827-5743, and you can look for Karen Caballero. You can also deposit cash donations in these bank accounts, which you can see on your screens right now. There are also a number of groups who are accepting donations for Quake victims. You can visit their social media pages for details.